Good morning, y'all. I can say that here, right? It's interesting, as I go different places, I have to be careful how I talk. I was in Africa a couple years ago, and I asked them, I said, I was speaking to the government leaders for 4 days, and I said, now they speak English, don't they? And they said, yes, because to translate from English into Kinyarwanda will take a 1 to 3 to 1 to 5. And so you can really lose a lot of time. And they said, oh, they speak English. I said, good. And I got up and I started talking, and I didn't get one sentence out. And this ambassador stood up, walked up to me, leaned in my ear, and he says, turn off the Southern. And I thought, I don't know how to do that. It was 158 years ago today. 158 years ago today. It was June 5, 1863. General Robert E. Lee was leaving Fredericksburg with the Northern Virginia Army and was traveling over to Culpeper. And in Culpeper, he was to spend the night, and then he was going to head over to the Shenandoah Valley, head north, and soon would be a battle in Pennsylvania called Gettysburg. Well, as Lee left Fredericksburg, Lincoln sent Hooker down, his general Hooker down, to try to cut him off as they were heading over to Fredericksburg, but he missed them, and they headed on over to Culpeper. That was Friday, June 5, 1863. Well, that afternoon, Elder White and Mrs. White left Battle Creek, and they were heading down over to Ostego, I guess is how they say it, and they were having some meetings there, and the Whites wanted to support them. They got there right before sundown, and the folks kind of came together at these folks' house to have Friday evening worship. And the man of the house asked Mrs. White to pray as they were going to go into the Friday evening sundown worship. And she stood there, she put her hand on her husband's shoulder, and she started to pray. And as she was praying, she went into a vision. And that vision, 158 years ago, well, it's interesting. What was the date? June 5. But if you read her accountant, she says it was June 6. What do you reckon? Pardon? It was after sundown. And our pioneers changed the date after sundown, just as Genesis 1 changes the date after sundown. And why do I tell the story of General Lee marching from Fredericksburg to Culpeper? To share with you how long ago that vision was. 158 years ago tonight, that vision took place. And the question is, what have we done with it? Let me share another story. It was 15 years ago next month. And I was in Dallas, Texas, and I was with ASI, and we were doing an evangelistic series at Jim Gilley's church, and that's the Dallas First Church. That's the big church there in Dallas. And on Sunday, we had a health expo, and folks came through, and then we would invite them to come to our evangelistic series, which is a whole month of meetings. So as Sunday is in the gymnasium where their school was, and we had a mess of folks come through, and I was in the last part, which was talking to folks about what they had seen, what they thought about it, and this big old feller come through, and then he looked kind of out of place. And I said, well, how'd you like it? And he said, oh, I really enjoyed it. I said, well, we're going to have more meetings in the evenings on health if you'd like to come. He said, I'll come. What I didn't know, he had just got out of prison as a drug dealer. And can you imagine a drug dealer coming to health classes? So he came. He came every night, and he sat, it's a Dallas First Church, is this huge church, and he sat right there, right in front of you, ma'am. That's the second seat right there every night. And we would have health classes at the beginning for 15 minutes, and then we would then have the evangelistic series. Well, he was a little embarrassed to get up and walk out, so he sat there the whole time. Well, we've been going for about a week, and I asked him, I said, how are the meetings going? He said, clear as mud. Clear as mud. That's not good. And I gotten to talk to him as we do, and I'd found out that he's a drug dealer, and he just got out of prison, and he and his wife weren't doing too good. They were thinking about getting a divorce, and he was out on the streets at night back doing his job, and they didn't get to spend much time together, and he was tired during the daytime, and he'd sleep during the day, and he'd have nightmares when he would sleep. They was going back to prison, not because he's getting caught selling drugs again, it's because he and his wife didn't get along well, and they were fighting, and he got caught doing that and going back to prison, and that's what he kept having these nightmares of. And I said, I'm thinking, what do I do? And I pray, and I asked him this strange question. I said, his name, I said, we'll call him Joe. I said, Joe, you ever thought about going to an addiction cessation class? A drug dealer. No. Would you like to come? We're having some. Said, okay. And she started coming to our classes. So he came to the classes, and we went and got him a job, so he would helped him get a job during the daytime, found him a job there in Dallas, so he didn't have to work on the streets at night selling drugs, and things got a little bit better. He started sleeping the same time as his wife was sleeping at night, and that got better. And about 2 weeks went on, so we're talking third week into the crusade. I said, we'll call him Joe. Joe, how's it going? What do you think about it? He goes, I'm starting to understand it. He says, it's getting clear. I can understand it. Good. 1 week later, Jim Gilley baptized him in the Dallas First Church. Now, what happened physiologically with this fella? What happened? See, what happened is what we learned 158 years ago from tonight. It's called the health message. That health message, it's so simple. See, we get so caught up in academia. We just know so much. But are we able to take it from here and put it to here? Are we able to take it from here and put it to here? It's interesting. I was talking to an ambassador just this week, and we just finished another series over in Rwanda this last week. And one of the guys who came through it was the minister of finance for the whole country, and he now owns. He retired from that, and now he owns one of the largest insurance companies in the country. And I said, that's great. He said he'd like to start sending people, and he really enjoyed it. And I said, great. I said, let's put it together, some information to send out to all of his customers and to his staff and teach them about health. And the ambassador told me, he says, no, that won't work. I said, okay, teach me. He said, if they get a little bit of knowledge, they'll think they have a lot of knowledge, and they won't learn anymore. He says, no, this man's willing to send. See, we do these lifestyle programs where people come, and we've got ambassadors that come. We have Parliament that come. I had one of their generals' wives that came, and just all kinds of highfalutin people come. And he said he was willing to send 20 people each time we do a program to that. He said, that ambassador told me, he said, Walt, it is better that they learn there over a 2-week period than just send them some information, because they'll think they know everything. I said, sir, you're exactly right. I understand that. Do we sometimes in the church today think we know everything about health because we just read about it? Oh, I know about them 8 laws of health. My mama told me about it. My grandma told me about it. But do we really know about them? How beneficial they are and why God gave them to us? See, when Keith started sleeping at night, his brain started working better. We'll forget that word I just said. And when old Joe, when he quit smoking and he quit drinking, his brain started working better. Do you see how that works? Well, let's take a look. We found that there was 8 keys 158 years ago tonight. And the first key is fuel. What is the fuel that we put in our body? Now, how many of y'all fellas or women like cars? Do any of y'all like cars? Okay. Well, I've got this fella who comes and sees me. He was there last week at work. And he likes cars. And he's got him a long beard down to here. And he's up in his 70s. And he's just a typical moonshine-looking guy. Well, a couple years ago, he decided he'd save some money. And he went and bought cash this car. And it had 800 and some horsepower. It's called a Dodge Hellcat. Now, he didn't buy it just the regular one. He had them to fix it a little better. And so it had 800 and some horsepower. And he got it and brought it by and showed it to me. And he says, Walt, it's got a 3/4-inch fuel line and this and that. And it was getting 2 miles to the gallon according to the computer. And he says, you won't believe how fast this thing is. But then he decided it wasn't fast enough. And he said, Walt, I'm sending it to Level Cross, North Carolina, to get it worked on. Now, this car only had 400 miles on it by this time. Now, can anybody tell me who lives in Level Cross, North Carolina? Come on, Petty fans. Anybody know who lives in North Carolina and Level Cross? Richard Petty. Richard Petty. So he sent his car to Richard Petty. And Richard Petty is the only man in the United States, the only institute in the United States or anywhere probably in the world that can fix a Dodge and it still be under the Dodge warranty. Mr. Petty cranked it up to 1,500 horsepower. 1,500 horsepower. Took first gear out because it just squalled its tires. And Mr. Petty told him, he said, now, sir, he says, you can't drive it in the rain. And he says, when you park it, you can't park it with the tires turned because when you start to move forward, it'll do a victory spin. And he tried it. That was true. He has to park it with his tires straight. And Mr. Petty told him, no longer can you stop at the gas station to get your fuel. You can't even put high test in it. You have to put racing fuel in there because you have to use 115 octane because I now have built you a race car. And not only does it have 2 now fuel pumps, it has a 1-inch fuel line. A 1-inch fuel line. Mr. Petty said it no longer has miles to the gallon, it's miles to the gas tank. Now, do you think this man, who knows how much money he's got into it, it's a mess of money, do you think he's going to put regular gasoline in it? Do you think he's going to put kerosene in it? Or how about diesel? Did you hear about the girl a couple of weeks ago? Remember when we had that gas shortage a few weeks ago? And that girl tweeted out, who knows where she lives, somewhere on the East Coast. She tweeted out to her friends, just a warning y'all, don't put diesel in your car. She said, I thought it only made the vehicles loud. And they were out of regular fuel, and she put diesel in her car. She thought it just made them loud. Well, he can only put 115 octane. Now, which do you think is more important? That Dodge Hellcat or the human body? Do you think God has certain food for us? He does. The problem is we live here in the South and we fry everything. Maters, taters, ice cream, pickles, chickens. Twinkies. I was in Chicago speaking at a church a couple months ago. And I was going through the airport and I see their front page. And how many of y'all from here in the South? Okay, y'all understand this. And it had two marijuana leaves. And the headlines was, if the South ever legalizes marijuana, it'll look like this. And it was two breaded and battered and deep fried marijuana leaves. We fry everything here, y'all. And it is not healthy for us. And there's no question, fried okra is good. I love fried okra, but Mary Lou has learned to put it in the oven, and it is a whole lot healthier for me. Well, let's look at the fuel here. What did we learn from this information? Well, let's go to Harvard University and see what Harvard has learned. We're not saying it. The rocks are crying out. Think about it. Your brain is always on. It takes care of your thoughts and movements, your breathing and heartbeat, your senses. It works 24/7, even while you are asleep. This means your brain requires constant supply of fuel. That fuel comes from the fuel you eat. Now, I'm reading Harvard University. And what's in that fuel makes all the difference. Put simply, what you eat directly affects the structure and function of your brain and ultimately your mood. Like an expensive car, your brain functions best when it gets only premium fuel. Eating high-quality foods that contain lots of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants nourishes the brain and protects it from oxidative stress, the waste free radicals produced when the body uses oxygen, which can damage cells. Unfortunately, just like an expensive car, your brain can be damaged if you ingest anything other than premium fuel, according to Harvard. If substances from low premium fuel, such as what you get from processed or refined foods, gets to the brain, it has little ability to get rid of them. Isn't that amazing? So yesterday was National Donut Day, we talked about earlier this morning. So when you eat that donut, when you eat the Twinkie, when you eat whatever may be on your list, that's processed food, refined food, the brain has a hard time getting it out of your brain. Now, can anybody tell me what is the most important organ in the body? Why? Pardon? It's what runs the body. What else? Makes decisions. Most importantly, what is the main function of the organ, the human brain? It is how we communicate with God. That's what we were talking about this morning in Sabbath school. That is why appetite is Satan's ultimate weapon. Because what we eat affects the function of the brain. The function of the brain determines how well we discern God's word and how we hear God's word. Now, this morning we're talking about how to get to know Christ better through lifestyle. If we have Joe's brain down in Dallas, Texas, can we have that relationship with Christ? Was Joe able to understand in that first few weeks? That first week? No. Diet high in refined sugar, for example, are harmful to the brain. In addition to worsening your body's regulation of insulin, they also promote inflammation and oxidative stress. Multiple studies have found a correlation between a diet in refined sugars and impaired brain function. Multiple studies, according to Harvard University, have found a correlation between a diet high in refined sugars and impaired brain function, and even a worsening of symptoms of mood disorders such as depression. Can we get that close relationship with Christ when the brain is not working well? No. Look at your own relationships with your spouses. If you're sick and you got a terrible headache, can you have a good relationship with your spouse right now? No. It makes sense. Your brain is deprived of good quality nutrition, or if free radicals or damaged inflammatory cells are circulating within the brain's enclosed space, further contributing to brain tissue injury, consequences are to be expected. What's interesting is that for many years, the medical field did not fully acknowledge the connection, according to Harvard, the connection between mood and food. Today, fortunately, the field of nutritional psychology, is finding there are many consequences and correlations between not only what you eat, how you feel, and how you ultimately behave. Isn't that interesting? Harvard says your behavior, how you behave, how you react, can be correlated to your food, but also the kinds of bacteria that live in your gut. And y'all pay attention to that last one, because we're going to see more and more information coming out of MIT, out of Harvard, on the gut biome and how important it is. And even down at Hopkins, or up in Hopkins, forget where I am, up in Maryland. What are some of the superfoods which improve brain function? Anybody want to guess what the number one superfood for brain function is? That's a good one. Anybody here from the Caribbean? Caribbean? Okay. Avocados? Yes. Avocados is the number one brain food. Beets, blueberries, broccoli, celery, green leafy vegetables, rosemary, turmeric, potatoes, asparagus, walnuts. Walnuts is the king of the nuts for the brain. Actually, the English walnuts are the best for the brain. The black walnuts are the best for cardiovascular, and then English. The second key in how to get to know Christ better. Neuroscientists around the globe agree that physical activity is the best medicine to maintain brain health throughout one's lifespan. Psychology Today. Neuroscientists around the globe agree that physical activity, exercise, is the best medicine to maintain brain health throughout one's lifespan. Psychology Today continues. Exercise improves the structure, function, and connectivity of your brain. There are many reasons that exercise is good for your brain. These include increased blood flow, which improves cerebrovascular health. The release of neurotropic factors like BDNF, which stimulate the growth of new neurons. And the benefits of glucose and lipid metabolism, which bring nourishment to the brain. People who regularly perform aerobic exercise, i.e. running, jogging, brisk walking, swimming, and cycling, they have greater scores on neuropsychological function. And performance tests that measure certain cognitive functions, such as attentional control, cognitive flexibility, working memory, declarative memory, spatial memory, and information processing speed. How's your information processing speed? I remember the first laptop that I got. See, before computers, we had to do budgets. Any of y'all work in finance? What are those long pieces of paper about this long? Ledgers. We used a ledger. And it would take me on average 2 weeks to write a budget for a healthcare facility. It was all based on cost per patient day, hours per patient day, and you had to do all the calculation, and that wasn't 9 to 5 either. It was 2 weeks of a lot of time. And I would write the budget, send it up to corporate. They'd look at it and say, I want you to change it by 1, 2 cost per patient, 2 patient days, and change it over from this intermediary or this private or whatever. And that changed everything. And so then I would have to go back to the ledger, a new clean ledger, and rewrite it. This time, because it was a lot faster, it'd only take me about a week. Usually that was from when I got to work in the morning till long hours. And then they introduced the computer. Remember Lotus? And we went to corporate, and they handed us a notebook. And we had all this information that was there, and they said to hit, I believe it was F7. Boom. It took about a minute, and then all the numbers changed. That was so cool. I could change one, up at the top part, I could, where my census was, I could change my census and just one patient, one patient day this, or change my hours per patient day this, and hit F7, and within 1 minute, I had a brand new budget. That was so cool. And I looked over as we're learning how to use this, but my buddy beside me from Durham, it'd take him about 5 seconds when he hit F7. And I noticed it, and we'd continue learning, and finally I said, what did you do to your computer? Nothing. I said, no, buddy, you did something. It's a lot faster than ours. I mean, all of us, it was taking about a minute when we hit F7. And you're taking about 3 or 5 seconds. What'd you do? He says, well, I changed my RAM. Your what? My RAM. Well, what'd you change it? He said, I went from 2 RAM to 4 RAM. Now, y'all in computers today know that 2 RAM and 4 RAM are not much, but we're talking lightning speed back then. And so I raised my hand and I told the instructor, I said, I want what he has. I want 4 RAM because I want to go from 1 minute, which was taken a week before, to 3 or 5 seconds. Exercise changes your memory processing speed. Would you like to increase your memory processing speed? The transient effect of exercise on cognition includes improvement in most executive functions, i.e., attention. Anybody has problems with attention? Maybe your spouse, your kids, whatever. Attention, working memory, cognitive flexibility, inhibitory control, problem solving, and decision making. Decision making. Why did God give us these special 8 laws of health 158 years ago tonight? So that we would be better prepared to hear God's word in making decisions. Does it make sense? Exercise increases our decision-making ability and information processing speed for up to 2 hours after exercising. Number 3, the third key. Most health-conscious individuals are aware that staying well hydrated is important for the body's health. But did you know that hydration also is critical to brain function? Research has shown that dehydration has a number of negative neurological and psychological effects. Our brains depend on proper hydration to function optimally. Brain cells require a delicate balance between water and various elements to operate. And when you lose too much water, that balance is disrupted. Your brain cells lose efficiency. And what we call that is conductivity. Now, how many of y'all know that we have electricity in our body? Mary Lou had a EKG done yesterday morning down at UAB. They're monitoring the electricity in her heart. How many of y'all took chemistry? Do you remember in chemistry class when the professor took that flask and he filled it with distilled water and he put 110 volts in it in one wire and then took a light bulb and had it connected to the neutral but took the other bulb and put it in the water? What happened? Distilled water. The light bulb didn't come on. But then he went and started pouring salt in the water, making it a saline solution. And what happened? The light started coming on. The more salt he put in, the more light there was, the brighter the light was, the higher the salinity. And the atoms could go back and forth. But then he stopped, and then he poured more distilled water back into the flask. And what happened to the light? It started going down because the salinity went down. Did you know that's what happens in our body? It's pretty cool. When we drink water,
it changes the electrical current in our body. And I've gone back to school, and one of the courses I'm taking now is one of the courses I took last fall. In my fall semester, we studied that, and we studied a bunch of stuff in that class, but anyway, we would measure the conductivity in our body. So if we didn't have enough water, the electricity actually it went up because we had more sodium and other minerals in the body, so they were at a higher level. So as we drank more water and had retention of water, you need some retention, not a lot of retention, but proper retention of water, then the current came down. But if we drank too much water, then what happened? The electricity went too low. And so there's a certain level you need electricity in the body, conductivity, and water is the best way to regulate that. Isn't that cool? And so that's what they're talking about here. Years of research have found that when we're parched, we have more difficulty keeping our attention focused. Dehydration can impair short-term memory function and the recall of long-term memory. Do you ever forget stuff? Where you put the keys? Or maybe who's that person? It could be you're just dehydrated. The ability to perform mental arithmetic. I had a guy come in one time. This is several years ago. This guy came in and he said, Walt, he says, I think I have Alzheimer's. Well, normally when a person presents himself with thinking they have Alzheimer's, they probably don't have Alzheimer's. But he says, I think I have Alzheimer's. And he was about 45 years of age. And I said, what do you do? And he said, I worked in construction. And this is summertime. Okay. And I said, do you know what your B12 level is? Nope, because there's a huge correlation between B12 and cognitive function. I said, okay, let's try another one. Do you drink much water? He goes, I don't do water. Do you know people like that? I don't do water, I just do Pepsi or Mountain Dews. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to drink, I asked him how much he weighed, and I said, okay, I want you to drink this much water and come back and see me. He came back 2 weeks later and he said, Walt, again, how old is he? Mid-40s. He said, Walt, I haven't thought this well since I was in my teens. He said, I'm fine. He was dehydrated. His brain wasn't processing right. The ability to perform mental arithmetic, like calculating whether or not you'll be late for work if you hit the snooze button for another 15 minutes, is compromised when your fluids are low. The effect of dehydration on brain function depends on the severity of dehydration. Mild dehydration may adversely affect mood. You know anybody with mood problems? Energy levels. You know anybody with energy levels? Or the ability to concentrate, according to Psych Central, can be based on hydration. Mayo Clinic. Severe or prolonged dehydration may cause serious cognitive improvement, delirium, permanent brain damage, or even death. A person who has severe or prolonged dehydration. Dr. Batmanjati, anybody read Batmanjati's work? He's probably the best doctor, or was, he's dead now, probably the best medical doctor who understood hydration. And he was from India. People call him Dr. Batman. In his book, Your Body's Many Cries for Water, he identifies that a mere 2% drop in body water can trigger fuzzy short-term memory, trouble with mathematical skills, and difficulty focusing. He took a bunch of kids, elementary school kids, and he measured their mathematical ability by giving them a math test. And he hydrated them that day, proper hydration. The next day, he dehydrated them just 2%, and he found that gave them the same kind of math test, and they scored significantly less, just being 2% dehydrated. Now, you got the people who just don't do water, but do you have people who just, I forgot to drink my water? So how much water do you need to drink? According to University of California at Davis, it takes 4 water bottles 2 quarts or half a gallon to run a 5-year-old. According to University of California at Davis, it takes a half a gallon, which is 2 quarts or 4 pint bottles, 16-ounce bottles, to run a 5-year-old to sit on the couch. Up to 128 pounds. If they're over 128 pounds, it's body weight divided by 2. Body weight divided by 2 to sit on the couch. If you do a lot more activity, exercising or whatever, the state of Tennessee tells me I am required to drink a gallon of water a day when I'm at home because I might go into a house fire. I worked a wildland fire a few weeks ago, a 600-acre wildland fire. And when I fight fire with U.S. Forest Service or the National Park Service, they require me to drink, it used to be a gallon of water every 2 hours. Now it's every hour and a half that we're fighting big wildland fire, because you're so prone to dehydration. So it's based on the activity. One of the best ways to know how hydrated you are is to look at the urine. What's the color of the urine? Does it have an odor? And there are tests that you can do that we can measure hydration that are very accurate, and it's really interesting. So the number one thing is you need, if you're over 128 pounds, well, if you're under 128 pounds, how much water do you need to drink? From 5 years old to 128? Half a gallon. If you're over 128 pounds, what's the formula? Body weight divided by 2. But here's something really interesting that I learned back in this class back last fall. Now, yes, I'd learned it in physiology many years ago, and that is something called, who works in healthcare? We got healthcare folks. We have something called free flow. Y'all remember free flow. And depending on which physiology book you read, you lose if you drink more than 3 or 5 ounces of water at any given time, you have free flow. It just goes right on to the kidneys. But what we learned in this class was, if you will take just a sip of water, three to 4 times every half hour, except 15 minutes before a meal, during your meal, to an hour after your meal, and that's another issue. But the rest of the day, if you'll drink that much water, you will stay hydrated. Well, in this class, we measured all kinds of stuff. As I mentioned, conductivity, hydration, just all kinds of stuff. And we had to buy the equipment to do it. And the best way to learn something is learn on yourself. And then your family members were the guinea pigs. And so I started measuring all these numbers in class. And then I was doing my body weight divided by 2, and I was measuring that. And then when they started having us do that much water 3 to 4 times every half hour, boom, all of us in class, our hydration numbers came to where they belonged. Why? We didn't have free flow. See, many times we think, well, I need to drink my water. I hadn't drank today, and so we down a glass of water. But you just went into free flow, lost all that. And was it going to your brain to make your brain work? No. So God told us 158 years ago, tonight we got to drink water for the brains to work well so we can have that better relationship with Christ. The next one, well, there's so much to share, but we're just out of time. The next one is sunlight. Sunshine is very critical. We get vitamin D. Vitamin D boosts cognitive function. And the key on vitamin D is not how much you take. I got a buddy of mine. He comes in to see me. He's a medical doctor. And he just vows all you need is 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day, and you got plenty of vitamin D. Well, I had this lady come in, and she, and her vitamin D level was, let's see here, it's 12. It's 12. Now, normal vitamin D level is what? Y'all in healthcare, 30 to 100. Hers was 12. Not good. So I asked her how much vitamin D she did, and she said 5,000 IUs. I said, let's go to twice a day. Now, interesting thing is, I was talking to a buddy of mine, Dr. Irvin Davis. How many of y'all know Dr. Davis? You know Dr. Davis? Black physician down in Georgia. I was talking to Dr. Davis just day before yesterday. He and I last time I went to Africa, I took him with me because the medical school wants to do what we're doing there. And so he taught medicine at Tallahassee there, helped start it. And so Dr. Davis is going to be teaching there in Kigali at the medical school. And so when we went last time, Dr. Davis, he would talk to the folks and he said, now listen, y'all got sunglasses. He says, we have sunglasses on our skin. He said it takes 6 times more sunshine than it does Walt to make the same amount of vitamin D. And this lady's not black. She's white. She's Caucasian. So that wasn't a problem that she had darker skin. It was going to take longer. Plus, she worked outside in landscaping. And she had a 12 as her number. So we went to 5,000 twice a day, and we went to our vitamin D level over a 3-month period, went to 17. Well, that didn't work. How many of you know Dr. Ted Watkins? Okay, he graduated over here at Oakwood a few years ago. And so I called Watkins, who's a real good buddy of mine. We talk almost every day, sometimes 4 times a day, more. And as he has folks and I have folks, and we work together, we used to work together at a clinic together. So I called Watkins and I said, what do you think? He goes, do what I do, 20,000 twice a day. So we went to 20,000 twice a day. And 3 months later, her number was 24. There's a problem here. So it's not how much you take a day, what's the blood level? So I called him back and he goes, I don't know. So a few days later, this study comes out and it says if you're shy in magnesium, that can affect vitamin D absorption. So I encouraged her to take vitamin D to bowel tolerance. Her next blood test was 97. So when you look at your vitamin D consumption, yes, pigment color of the skin has an impact. Look at the Jamaican studies by Dr. Kime. So look at your exposure to the sunshine, but also look, yes, vitamin D you take internally, but look at your blood level. That is the key. Not how much you take a day, but what is your blood level. And so vitamin D is important. It helps with cognitive acceleration, how well your brain works. It affects your immune system. We've been talking about that over the last year, the effects of vitamin D in your immune system. It affects your HDL. We know from American Lipidemic Society that it increases HDL. If you want to raise your HDL to get rid of the LDL, to lower your cholesterol, have a good vitamin D level. Also, we found out that vitamin D is the #1 reason that boys are more prone to girls for autism, 5-to-1, because the little boys are deficient in vitamin D, and the little girls have enough estrogen that can make the difference, and the little boys don't have that much estrogen. So vitamin D deficiencies can increase brain degenerative processes. Just so much to share with y'all. Serotonin, serotonin affects brain function. What happens as ultraviolet light comes through and enters our eyes, it converts the tryptophan that was in your flaxseed this morning into serotonin. So as you go outside, sunshine comes, it doesn't work if you have sunglasses on. Light comes through the eye, stimulates the pineal gland to convert tryptophan. Now you got to eat it. Tryptophan into serotonin to make you have better brain function. Sunshine's so important. It causes your oils to come out. It makes your skin more tough to be able to deal with things. Sunshine is so important for brain function, though. The next law is temperance. And yes, you don't smoke. Yes, you don't do alcohol. Yes, you don't do drugs. But what's the music you listen to? The TV, the gaming, the social media. Temperance is making the right decisions. Yes, it's the right decisions on what you eat or what you drink or what you listen to, or drinking or smoking, or some things are moderation, some things are total abstinence. But it's also who you're running with. Are you careful, moms and dads? Who has young children? Do you regulate who they run with so that they don't pick up bad habits? Do we need to regulate who we run with so we don't pick up bad habits? Or maybe what we're listening to? Or maybe when we go up on a conversation and they're talking about whatever, could that conversation not help us with our relationship with Christ? We got 2 choices. We can try to change that conversation, or we can say, guys, I got something I need to work on. And you excuse yourself so that that conversation does not affect your relationship with Christ. The sixth law is oxygen, fresh air. And that's so important. We're fortunate that we live here and we're not in LA or China or whatever. But fresh air has many health benefits. It improves the brain's ability to function, gives clarity to the mind, improves concentration. It boosts learning abilities. It gives a sense of happiness and well-being. It promotes quality sleep. All these brain-needed things based on what are you breathing. The other thing is diaphragmatic breathing. And that is how do you breathe? Do you breathe like a chihuahua? You know what I'm saying? Y'all, when your young children were little, their stomachs went up and down. That's diaphragmatic breathing. And then when we start as adults, we say, we need diaphragmatic breathing, where when we breathe, the stomach, who's taking voice? Or maybe a wind instrument. Did you learn diaphragmatic breathing? I remember Elder Crook at Georgia Cumberland Academy. He'd lay when you first joined Camerata, he would lay you down and he'd stick a book on your stomach and then he'd say, breathe. And normally it didn't move. And he said, now I want you to go back to your room in the dorm. He did this in front of everybody. He said, I want you to go back to your dorm rooms later today and learn how to breathe as that book goes up and down. Diaphragmatic breathing. Diaphragmatic breathing. See, when you breathe like a chihuahua, you're not moving a lot of oxygen to give you oxygen in the blood. But when you have diaphragmatic breathing, you still don't even have 100% air exchange, but you sure improve it from that chihuahua breathing. And you have more oxygen going to the brain and to the whole body. Diaphragmatic breathing is so important, deep breathing. The next law, and we're almost finished here, is sleep. Sleep is so imperative to brain function. We used to think less than 6 hours was sleep deprivation. And then the Breslov-Belloc study, which many of y'all have heard of, the Alameda County study in California, which looked at 6,900 people over a 9-year period, found that less than 7 hours of sleep was sleep deprivation. Then they found, when they went on to 15-year study, that actually less than 8 hours causes sleep deprivation. Harvard has now moved that from 6 hours to 7 hours, and they're flirting. They are flirting, I believe, with 8 hours, because though they say less than 7, they keep still talking about the benefits of 8 hours sleep to 9 hours sleep. We know that over 9 hours sleep can cause you to die quicker, according to the Breslov-Belloc study, or Breslov-Belloc study. So that 8 to 9 hours is the optimum time to sleep. But there's more than just how many hours you get in sleep. The other is, when do you go to sleep? Harvard University found that it makes a difference. Y'all know what lymphatic system is? Well, when I was in school, we didn't know that the brain had a lymphatic system. It's called the glymphatic system. We found that out in 2014. And the glymphatic system kicks on around 9 o'clock at night, and it does a deep cleaning of the brain for about an hour. And then from 10 to midnight, it does a thorough cleaning and flushing of the brain. So from 9 o'clock to midnight, it's cleaning the brain. But guess what? You need to be asleep to flush the brain. It's kind of like not flushing the toilet. Our brains need to be clean to discern God's word. Our brain needs to be clean to have that relationship with Christ. Have we ever heard the hours before midnight? Or we're twice the hours after midnight? Have we ever heard that we need good sleep? Yeah, 158 years ago tonight, the Seventh-day Adventist Church got that information. Why? Because God loves us. And He wants us to be healthy so that we can follow these 8 laws of health, that we can, one, have a relationship with Christ. But I believe time is short, y'all. Daniel 12:1 says it's going to be a time as never before. Now, this last time I went to Rwanda, I had an opportunity to go to the Genocide Museum. And I had a rude awakening. Over 1 million people were killed in 100 days. And we have children here, and I want to describe what happened to children, or what happened to the wives, or even to the people. I was devastated. I didn't know human beings did that kind of stuff. But Daniel 12:1 tells us it will be a time as never before. It's going to be worse than the Holocaust. It's going to be worse than Rwanda. That's why Satan wants us to forget the history. He doesn't want us to know what it's like before. It's going to be a time as never before. And the only way that your brain is going to be able to deal with that is to have that last law of health, trusting God. That's important. But to be able to incorporate all those laws of health that God gave us 158 years ago tonight, in order for us to deal with that stuff, our bodies need to really be running good. It needs to be really tuned up. And if our brains don't function well, we're going to tap out. Do you know what I mean by tapping out? Do you want to go to heaven? Do you want a relationship with Christ? If we do the standard American whatever, we're not going to be able to fully do it now, much less what's to come. And so I encourage y'all not to just have that academic mind that says, oh, I've read about the 8 laws of health. I encourage you to incorporate those into your personal lives so that not just you have it, but your spouse has it, and your kids have it, and your grandkids have it.